My future mother-in-law insisted on paying for our entire wedding and called me the daughter she always wanted. Then I discovered she wasn't planning a wedding. She was planning my funeral. The life insurance policy was already in place. Some people collect stamps, others collect coins. Margaret Thornfield collected daughters-in-law. She'd had 4 of them over the years, and I was about to become the 5th. What I didn't understand at the time was that her collection had a very high turnover rate. I'm Emma Walsh, 26 years old, and until recently, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. I was engaged to Connor Thornfield, a successful architect from a wealthy family, and his mother Margaret absolutely adored me. She treated me like the daughter she never had and went out of her way to make me feel like part of the family. Looking back, I should have wondered why a woman who already had 4 daughters-in-law needed another one so badly. I met Connor at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle, where I worked as a barista while finishing my degree in graphic design. He was charming, well-dressed, and left generous tips. After 2 weeks of daily visits, he finally asked me out. "My mother is going to love you," he said on our 3rd date, which seemed like an odd thing to prioritize. But I was flattered that he was already thinking about introducing me to his family. Meeting Margaret Thornfield was like being embraced by a warm, perfumed hurricane. She was in her early 60s, impeccably dressed, and had the kind of refined elegance that comes from old money. Her house was a sprawling estate in Bellevue, with gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine. "Emma, darling," she exclaimed when Connor brought me to Sunday dinner. "You're absolutely gorgeous. Connor, you didn't tell me she was this beautiful." She insisted I sit next to her at dinner, and spent the entire evening asking about my background, my dreams, and my family. She seemed genuinely interested in every answer and made me feel like the most fascinating person in the room. "You know, Emma, I've always wanted a daughter," she confided as we looked at photo albums after dinner. "Boys are wonderful, but there's something special about the bond between women." Connor had mentioned that Margaret could be a bit much sometimes, but I found her enthusiasm endearing. My own mother had died when I was 16, and I'd missed having that maternal relationship in my life. Over the next few months, Margaret and I developed what felt like a genuine friendship. She would invite me to lunch, take me shopping, and even included me in her book club with her wealthy friends. "The other ladies are going to be so jealous," she would say. "You're so much more interesting than their boring daughters-in-law." This comment should have been a red flag, but at the time, I just felt grateful to be included. Margaret was incredibly generous. She bought me expensive clothes, jewelry, and even paid for a spa weekend when I mentioned being stressed about final exams. "Think of it as an investment in Connor's happiness," she would say when I protested about the expensive gifts. A happy daughter-in-law means a happy son. When Connor proposed after 8 months of dating, Margaret was more excited than I was. "Oh, Emma, this is wonderful. We're going to plan the most beautiful wedding," she exclaimed, pulling me into a suffocating hug. "I've been dreaming about this day for years." That comment struck me as odd, since she'd only known me for 8 months, but I assumed she meant she'd been hoping Connor would find someone to marry. Margaret immediately took charge of wedding planning with an enthusiasm that bordered on manic. "Don't worry about anything, darling," she insisted. "I want to pay for everything. Consider it my gift to you and Connor." She booked the venue, hired the caterer, and chose the florist before Connor and I had even set a date. When I suggested we might want a smaller, more intimate ceremony, she looked genuinely hurt. "Emma, this is going to be the social event of the season," she said. "You don't want to disappoint all our friends, do you?" I didn't realize I had our friends yet. But Margaret seemed to have strong opinions about everything, so I went along with her plans. The wedding dress shopping was where things started to feel truly strange. Margaret insisted we go to the most expensive bridal boutique in Seattle, where she'd apparently already made an appointment. "I've picked out a few dresses for you to try," she announced when we arrived. "I know exactly what will look perfect on you." The sales associate, a woman named Helen, seemed to know Margaret well. "Mrs. Thornfield, so lovely to see you again," Helen said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Same style as before?" "Of course," Margaret replied. "Emma has the perfect figure for it." The dress Margaret had chosen was stunning, classic white gown with intricate beadwork and a long train. It was also clearly very expensive and exactly the kind of formal dress I would never have chosen for myself. When I tried it on, Margaret started crying. "Oh, Emma, you look absolutely perfect," she sobbed. "Just perfect." Helen nodded approvingly. "Beautiful choice, Mrs. Thornfield. Very traditional." Something about the way they were looking at me made me uncomfortable, like they were seeing something I wasn't. "Actually, I was hoping to try on some other styles too," I said. "Maybe something a little less formal?" Margaret's face fell. "But darling, this dress is perfect for you. It's exactly what I envisioned." "I know, but I'd like to see what other options are available." "Emma," Margaret said firmly, "trust me on this. I have excellent taste, and this dress is exactly right for the wedding I've planned." The possessive way she said, "the wedding I've planned," instead of "your wedding," bothered me, but I didn't want to seem ungrateful. We bought the dress, along with shoes, undergarments, and accessories that Margaret selected. The total was over 8-0, which made me feel sick. But Margaret waved away my concerns. "Money is no object when it comes to family," she said. "Besides, you'll only wear it once." That last comment would haunt me later. The guest list was another source of tension. Margaret had invited over 200 people, most of whom I'd never met. "These are important social connections," she explained when I questioned why we needed such a large wedding. "The Thornfield name carries weight in this city, and people expect a certain standard." When I asked if I could invite some of my college friends, Margaret looked uncomfortable. "Of course, darling, but let's keep your guest list small. We don't want the wedding to feel unbalanced." By unbalanced, she apparently meant that my working class friends might not fit in with her wealthy social circle. Connor seemed oblivious to the tension. When I tried to talk to him about feeling overwhelmed by his mother's involvement, he brushed off my concerns. "Mom's just excited," he said. "She's always been a perfectionist about parties and events. Let her have this, it makes her happy. But it's supposed to be our wedding, not her party. Emma, she's paying for everything. The least we can do is let her plan it the way she wants." This attitude frustrated me, but I was raised to be polite and grateful, so I kept my objections to myself. 3 months before the wedding, Margaret suggested we get life insurance policies. "It's just smart financial planning," she explained during one of our lunch dates. "Married couples should always have life insurance to protect each other. Isn't that something Connor and I should discuss together?" "Of course, but I wanted to mention it because I know an excellent insurance agent. He's a family friend and can get you wonderful rates." The insurance agent, Robert Pierce, met with Connor and me the following week. He was a smooth-talking man in his 50s who seemed to know exactly what coverage we needed. "For a young couple like yourselves, I recommend substantial term life insurance policies," he explained. "Given Connor's family wealth and future earning potential, I'd suggest at least $2 million coverage for each of you." $2 million seemed like an enormous amount for 2 people in their 20s, but Robert assured us it was standard for people in Connor's social class. "You want to make sure that if anything happens to either of you, the survivor can maintain their lifestyle and pay off any debts," he said. The policies required medical exams, which we completed the next week. Mine came back with perfect result, excellent health, no risk factors, ideal candidate for life insurance. "You're going to live to be 100, the nurse joked when she gave me the results. 2 weeks later, the policies were approved and active. Connor would receive $2 million if I died, and I would receive the same if he died. Margaret was listed as the backup beneficiary on both policies, which seemed reasonable since she was Connor's mother. "Now, you're both protected," Margaret said when we signed the final paperwork. "I can sleep better knowing you're both taken care of." Around this time, I started noticing odd things about Margaret's behavior. She began asking detailed questions about my daily routine where I worked, what time I got off, which route I took home, whether I went anywhere alone. "I worry about young women living alone in the city," she explained. "There are so many dangerous people out there." She also became very interested in my health and fitness routine. "You should try this new yoga studio," she would suggest. "And there's a wonderful hiking trail in the mountains that you'd love." When I mentioned that I didn't really enjoy hiking, she seemed disappointed. "But you're so outdoorsy. I thought you'd love exploring the beautiful wilderness around Seattle." I'd never described myself as outdoorsy, and I couldn't remember mentioning any interest in hiking or wilderness activities. Margaret also started giving me supplements and vitamins. "These will give you energy and make your skin glow. For the wedding photos," she said, handing me bottles of pills I'd never heard of, I take them every day. That's why I look so young for my age. The supplements made me feel strange, sometimes energetic, sometimes nauseous, sometimes dizzy. When I mentioned this to Margaret, she assured me it was normal. Your body is just adjusting to the vitamins, she said. Keep taking them. You'll feel amazing once your system gets used to them. I started doing some research on the supplements and discovered that several of them weren't actually vitamins at all, but herbal compounds with unpredictable effects. Some could cause heart palpitations or interact dangerously with other medications. When I confronted Margaret about this, she seemed surprised. "Oh, those must have been mislabeled," she said quickly. "I'll get you the right ones." But instead of bringing new supplements, she stopped mentioning them altogether. The real warning sign came 6 weeks before the wedding when I ran into Helen, the sales associate from the bridal boutique, at a coffee shop. "Emma, how are the wedding preparations going?" she asked. "Great, thanks." "Your boutique was wonderful. The dress is beautiful." Helen's smile faltered slightly. "I'm glad you're happy with it. That's always important." Something in her tone made me probe further. "Is everything okay? You seem concerned about something." Helen looked around nervously, then leaned closer. "Can I ask you something? How well do you know Mrs. Thornfield?" "She's my future mother-in-law." "Why?" "It's probably nothing. But has she mentioned her previous daughters-in-law to you?" My blood went cold. "Previous daughters-in-law? Oh no," Helen whispered. "You don't know, do you?" "No what?" Helen sat down across from me, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Emma, Connor has been married before. 4 times, actually." The world tilted sideways. "That's impossible. He would have told me." Mrs. Thornfield brought all 4 of them to my shop. Same routine every time. She picks out the dress, pays for everything, insists on the same style. "You're the 5th bride I've dressed for Connor Thornfield." I felt like I was going to vomit. "What happened to the other wives?" "That's what's so strange. They all died within a year of getting married. Accidents, mostly. Car crashes, hiking accidents, a drowning. One had a heart attack, which was surprising since she was only 23 and seemed perfectly healthy." Helen leaned closer and whispered, "The really weird part is that Mrs. Thornfield always seems to know about the accidents before they happen. She's called me the day after each death to cancel dress alterations for family events, like she was expecting the call." I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process what I was hearing. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. "Because you seem like a nice person, and the others were nice too," Helen said. "And because I've been feeling guilty for years about not saying something sooner. Do you think Margaret is somehow involved in what happened to them?" "I don't know, but I do know that she's been planning this wedding exactly the same way she planned the others. Same venue, same flowers, same dress style, same everything. It's like she has a template." That night, I confronted Connor about his previous marriages. "Why didn't you tell me you'd been married before?" I demanded as soon as he walked into my apartment. Connor's face went white. "Who told you about that?" "It doesn't matter who told me. What matters is that you lied to me. 4 times, Connor. You've been married 4 times and you never mentioned it once." Connor sat down heavily on my couch. "I didn't lie. I just didn't bring it up." "That's the same thing as lying. How could you not mention that you've had 4 wives?" "Because they're all dead, Emma. It's not exactly easy to talk about." "They're all dead? All 4 of them?" "Yes. It's been traumatic. I didn't want to burden you with that history." "What happened to them?" Connor ran his hands through his hair. "Accidents. Car crashes, mostly. Sarah died in a hiking accident. Jennifer had a heart attack." "And you didn't think I should know about this before we got engaged?" "I was going to tell you eventually. I just wanted us to be happy for a while before I had to explain all the tragedy in my past." Something about his explanation didn't sit right with me. He seemed more annoyed than grief-stricken when discussing his dead wives. "Connor, don't you think it's strange that all 4 of your wives died in accidents?" "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying it's an unusual pattern." Connor's expression hardened. "Are you accusing me of something, Emma?" "No, I'm just trying to understand why you kept this from me. Because I knew you'd react like this. I knew you'd get paranoid and start imagining conspiracies. I think it's reasonable to be concerned about marrying someone whose 4 previous wives all died mysteriously. They weren't mysterious. They were accidents. Terrible, tragic accidents that I've spent years trying to recover from. But as Connor explained each death, I noticed he knew very specific details about the accident's times, locations, exact causes of death. For someone who claimed to be traumatized by the losses, he seemed remarkably well informed about the circumstances. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Helen's words and the strange coincidences surrounding my relationship with Margaret and Connor. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day at the public library researching the deaths of Connor's previous wives. What I found was disturbing. Sarah Thornfield, wife 1, died in a car accident on a mountain road exactly 6 months after their wedding. She'd been driving alone to meet Connor for their anniversary dinner when her car went off a cliff. Lisa Thornfield, wife 2, drowned during a couple's retreat at a remote lake. She'd gone for a swim alone while Connor was allegedly napping in their cabin. Jennifer Thornfield, wife 3, had a heart attack while hiking alone on a trail that Margaret had recommended. She was 23 years old with no history of heart problems. Rebecca Thornfield, wife 3, 4, died in a car accident 6 months after the wedding, just like Sarah. Her car had also gone off a mountain road under suspicious circumstances. The pattern was clear. All 4 wives had died alone, in accidents that couldn't be easily investigated, exactly 6 months after their weddings. I also discovered that Connor and Margaret had collected substantial life insurance payouts from each death. The policies were always for large amounts, 1 million or more, and were always taken out shortly before the weddings. This was exactly what was happening with me. But the most chilling discovery was a newspaper article about Rebecca's death. The article mentioned that she'd been taking supplements prescribed by a family friend to help her with wedding stress. The supplements had interacted with prescription medication she was taking, potentially causing a heart episode that contributed to the car accident. I remembered the strange supplements Margaret had given me and felt sick. That evening, I didn't go home after work. Instead, I drove to a hotel and checked in under a fake name, paying with cash. I needed time to think and plan without Connor or Margaret knowing where I was. I called my best friend Jessica, who lived in Portland, and told her everything. "Emma, you need to go to the police," she said immediately. "With what evidence?" "Everything I found is circumstantial, and Connor and Margaret are wealthy and well-connected. Who's going to believe that they're serial killers? But you can't just marry him knowing what you know." "I'm not going to marry him, but I need to be smart about how I handle this. If I just disappear or cancel the wedding suddenly, they might panic and try to hurt me sooner." Jessica was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to pretend everything is normal until I can gather more evidence. And then I'm going to make sure they can't hurt anyone else." Over the next 2 weeks, I became the perfect fiancé. I smiled at dress fittings, enthusiastically discussed honeymoon plans, and acted completely devoted to Connor and grateful to Margaret. But I was also secretly documenting everything. I installed a hidden camera app on my phone and started recording conversations with Margaret and Connor. I photographed the supplements Margaret gave me and had them analyzed by a friend who worked at a lab. The results confirmed my suspicions. The supplements contained a combination of herbs and compounds that could cause heart palpitations, dizziness, and dangerous interactions with other medications. I also hired a private investigator to look into the deaths of Connor's previous wives more thoroughly. What he found was explosive. Connor had been having affairs with other women during all 4 of his previous marriages. In each case, the wives had discovered the affairs shortly before their deaths. Sarah had confronted Connor about his infidelity the day she died. Lisa had hired a divorce attorney the week before her death. Jennifer had been planning to leave Connor when she died on that hiking trail. Rebecca had actually filed for divorce and was scheduled to receive a substantial settlement when she died in the car accident. The private investigator also discovered that Margaret had been present at or near the scene of all 4 accidents. She'd been coincidentally driving on the same mountain road when Sarah's car went off the cliff. She'd been at the lake resort when Lisa drowned. She'd recommended the hiking trail where Jennifer died and had given her specific directions. She'd been driving behind Rebecca when her car went off the road. Margaret wasn't just covering up Connor's crimes, she was actively participating in them. But the most shocking discovery came when the private investigator looked into Margaret's background. Connor wasn't her biological son. She'd adopted him when he was 12 years old, after his birth parents died in a house fire that was later ruled suspicious. Margaret had been married twice before adopting Connor. Both of her previous husbands had died in accidents and left her substantial inheritances. Margaret Thornfield was a serial killer who had been murdering family members for money for over 30 years. Connor was either her accomplice or her latest victim. I wasn't sure which. 2 weeks before the wedding, I knew I had enough evidence to go to the police. But I also knew that wealthy people often escape consequences for their crimes, especially when the evidence is complex and circumstantial. I needed to catch them in the act. I decided to give them an opportunity to try to kill me under controlled circumstances, where I could gather irrefutable evidence of their intentions. I told Margaret and Connor that I wanted to go on a pre-wedding hiking trip to clear my head and connect with nature before the big day. Margaret's eyes lit up with excitement. What a wonderful idea. I know the perfect trail. It's very secluded and peaceful, exactly what you need. Actually, I was hoping you could come with me, I said. I'd love to spend some quality time with my future mother-in-law. Margaret looked surprised, but pleased. I'd be honored, darling. Connor seemed less enthusiastic about the idea, which confirmed my suspicion that Margaret was the primary killer, and he was just along for the money. We planned the hiking trip for the Saturday before our Wednesday wedding. Margaret insisted on driving and choosing the trail. The night before the hike, I met with Detective Rachel Martinez, the police officer who'd been assigned to investigate my suspicions. This is incredibly dangerous, she warned me. If you're right about them, you could be walking into a death trap. That's why I need you and your team positioned along the trail, I said. I'll be wearing a wire and a GPS tracker. If they try anything, you'll have everything on tape. Emma, we can't guarantee your safety. These people have allegedly killed 5 people and gotten away with it every time. They got away with it because their victims were isolated and helpless. I won't be either of those things. Detective Martinez shook her head. I still think this is too risky. It's the only way to get evidence that will stick in court. And if we don't stop them now, they'll just find another victim after me. Early Saturday morning, Margaret picked me up in her SUV. She was unusually talkative during the drive, asking questions about my life insurance policy and whether I'd updated my will since getting engaged. It's just smart to have your affairs in order, she said. You never know what might happen. The trail she'd chosen was remote and difficult, with steep drops and unstable footing. It was exactly the kind of place where an accident could happen easily. About an hour into the hike, Margaret started acting strangely. She kept checking her phone and looking at her watch, like she was waiting for something. Is everything okay? I asked. Oh yes, darling. I just want to make sure we have enough time to reach the scenic overlook I wanted to show you. The scenic overlook turned out to be a narrow ledge with a 200-foot drop to the rocks below. Margaret positioned herself between me and the main trail, effectively trapping me near the edge. Isn't this beautiful? She said, but her voice had lost its warm motherly tone. This is where Jennifer loved to come. She said it made her feel close to heaven. My blood ran cold. Jennifer came here? Oh yes. This was her favorite spot. She felt so peaceful here right before she died. Margaret reached into her backpack and pulled out a small bottle of pills. Emma, you look a little pale. You should take one of these, they'll help with the altitude. What are they? Just some herbal supplements, the same ones I gave you before you remember how good they made you feel. I knew those pills could cause heart palpitations or interact dangerously with the energy drink Margaret had insisted I bring on the hike. Actually, I'm feeling fine, I said, backing away slightly. Margaret's expression hardened. Emma, take the pill. I don't think I need it. I wasn't asking. Margaret stepped closer, holding the bottle. You're going to take this pill, and then you're going to have a tragic accident on this beautiful trail, just like Jennifer and Sarah and Lisa and Rebecca? Margaret smiled coldly. You've been doing research. I wondered when you'd figure it out. You're smarter than the others. I'll give you that. Why are you doing this? Why do you keep killing Connor's wives? Because Connor is weak and sentimental. He falls in love with these girls and wants to keep them around forever. But love doesn't pay the bills, Emma. Insurance money does. So you kill them for money? I kill them because they become liabilities. They start asking questions, wanting Connor to be more independent, threatening to take him away from me. I've invested too much in that boy to let some girl ruin everything. Connor's not even your real son. Margaret's eyes flashed with anger. He's more my son than he ever was theirs. I saved him from a miserable life with worthless parents. I gave him everything: education, opportunities, a future. The least he can do is be grateful. By helping you murder innocent women? Connor doesn't help. Connor doesn't even know. He thinks his wives just have terrible luck with accidents. This revelation shocked me. Connor wasn't a willing participante, was another one of Margaret's victims, psychologically manipulated into unknowingly participating in his wives' murders. He's going to figure it out eventually, I said. No, he won't. Connor sees what he wants to see. He loves his wives until they're gone. Then he grieves for exactly the right amount of time, and then he finds someone new. It's a perfect cycle. Margaret pulled out her phone and showed me a text message. Connor thinks you decided to extend your hike and stay overnight in the mountains. He won't expect you back until tomorrow, which gives me plenty of time to stage your accident. People will investigate if I die the same way your other victims did. No, they won't. You're going to have a different kind of accident. You're going to fall and hit your head on the rocks. Very tragic. Very believable. The supplements will just ensure that you're dizzy enough to make the fall convincing. Margaret advanced toward me with the pills, and I realized she was planning to force them down my throat. But I was ready for her. Margaret, I said loudly and clearly, are you confessing to murdering Sarah, Lisa, Jennifer, and Rebecca Thornfield? Yes, I killed them all, she said impatiently. And now I'm going to kill you too. Take the damn pills. And you're planning to kill me by forcing me to take these supplements and then pushing me off this cliff? Obviously. Now stop stalling and... Margaret suddenly realized that I was speaking unusually, loudly, and clearly, like I was performing for an audience. Her eyes narrowed. You're wearing a wire. Yes, I am. And the police have been listening to every word you've said. Margaret's face went pale, then red with rage. You little bitch. She lunged at me with the pills, but I was ready. I dodged to the side, and she stumbled toward the edge of the cliff. For a moment, I thought she was going to fall, but she caught herself and turned toward me with murder in her eyes. If I'm going down, you're coming with me, she snarled. But before she could grab me, Detective Martinez and 3 other officers emerged from the trees along the trail. Margaret Thornfield, you're under arrest for the murders of Sarah, Lisa, Jennifer, and Rebecca Thornfield, and for the attempted murder of Emma Walsh. Margaret looked around wildly, realizing she was trapped. This is entrapment, she screamed. You can't arrest me for something I was tricked into confessing. Actually, we can, Detective Martinez said calmly, especially since we have evidence of your previous crimes. As they handcuffed Margaret, she turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. You have no idea what you've done, she hissed. Connor will never forgive you for this. You've ruined everything. I've saved my life and probably other women's lives too. Connor loves me more than he'll ever love you. He'll choose me over you every time. Then he can visit you in prison. Margaret was led away, still screaming threats and protests. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of Margaret's crimes. She'd been killing family members for money for over 30 years, starting with her first husband in 1989. Connor was devastated when he learned the truth. He genuinely loved all of his wives and had no idea that his mother was murdering them. I should have seen the pattern, he said when we met to talk after Margaret's arrest. I should have realized that 4 accidents was too many to be coincidental. She manipulated you too, I said. She made sure you never suspected anything. But I should have protected them. I should have protected you. You couldn't protect them because you didn't know they needed protection. And I protected myself. Connor apologized profusely and begged me to reconsider our relationship. We could start over, he said, move somewhere else, build a new life together. But I couldn't. Even though Connor was innocent of the murders, he was still the common denominator in 5 women's deaths. I couldn't marry someone whose presence in my life made me a target for violence. I'm sorry, Connor, I said as I returned the engagement ring. I care about you, but I can't live with the possibility that there might be other people out there who want to hurt me because of my connection to you. Connor understood, though it broke his heart. Margaret was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole for 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. The evidence against her was overwhelming, including her recorded confession and physical evidence from the previous crime scenes. Connor moved to another state and started therapy to deal with the trauma of learning that his mother was a serial killer. We exchanged Christmas cards, but we don't have any other contact. I went back to my graphic design career and eventually started my own company. I also became an advocate for domestic violence awareness, speaking at events about recognizing the warning signs of family-based violence. The experience taught me that predators often hide behind facades of love and generosity. Margaret presented herself as the perfect mother-in-law, but she was actually a calculating killer who viewed family members as resources to be exploited. I learned to trust my instincts when something feels wrong, even if I can't immediately explain why. Those uncomfortable feelings I had during dress shopping and wedding planning were my subconscious mind recognizing that something was seriously wrong. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one who claims to love you the most. Margaret collected daughters-in-law like trophies, and she came terrifyingly close to adding me to her collection. But I'm still here, and she's in prison where she belongs. Sometimes when I'm feeling grateful for my escape, I think about Sarah, Lisa, Jennifer, and Rebecca's women who didn't make it out alive. They were young, kind, and full of potential, and they deserve so much better than to become victims of Margaret's greed. I honor their memory by living the life they never got to live, and by making sure their story is told so that other women can recognize the warning signs and protect themselves. Margaret thought she was collecting daughters-in-law, but what she was really collecting was a pattern of evidence that would eventually lead to her downfall. In the end, her obsession with control and money cost her everything, while the women she tried to silence got the last word. Justice isn't always perfect, but sometimes it's exactly what evil people deserve.